Hi, this is Griffin Hill alongside my three partners, and we're the Four Musketeers. We have a show today, and we'd just like to talk some NFL football, and we might get into a little bit of college football, but we want to start with what everyone wants to talk about at the end of the season. We're going to talk about it now, the Super Bowl. Who do you think is going to get there?
For the AFC, I think the Patriots are going to be in the Super Bowl. I think there's no doubt. They definitely added from last year. And then in the NFC, I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. I think, even though I don't really want to say it, maybe the Cowboys have a chance. I think the New York Giants also have a chance. And I think the Seattle Seahawks also have a chance.
Philip?
I believe with the high-powered offense they have in the AFC, if they can keep everyone healthy, the Pittsburgh Steelers will make it to the Super Bowl. They have a good enough defense where they just have to hold the opponent under 21 points, and they can win every game of the season. With Le'Veon Bell is almost a guaranteed 2 touchdowns a game. I just think they have enough offensive weapons where you can't scheme against you just can't scheme against them. And out of the NFC, I believe the Cowboys will make it. I don't think Dak Prescott will have the what's usually the sophomore slump year that most quarterbacks fall into. But I think the Cowboys have a great offensive line, good coaching. They have a bend but don't break defense that will put them in a very good opportunity to win the Super Bowl this year.
I personally believe that in the AFC, I know, Philip, you said the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I just don't know if their defense is going to be able to play consistent enough to take them all the way to the Super Bowl. I do think that the New England Patriots, though, will head to the Super Bowl. They added Brandon Cooks to an already lethal offense, and Tom Brady, he's going to do his thing. And then you add the weapons of Brandon Cooks and Julian Edelman into the mix alongside Rob Gronkowski. It's a scary offense. So I see the Patriots, and then I see for the third time, I see the Giants making the Super Bowl. So I'm going to see a Giants-Patriots round 3, part 3, whatever you want to call it. I see, Eli Manning, we struggled in the past few years, but Odell Beckham Jr., in my opinion, he is a top 2 receiver in the league. In my opinion, it's a toss-up between Odell and Antonio Brown for who's the best. People will argue Julio Jones, but I still think that Odell and Antonio are at the top there. And then for their defense, they have arguably the best defense in the NFL. So I really think that they will do a good job. They also added Brandon Marshall. They also have Sterling Shepard back. He got hurt today in practice. We will have to see if that will linger, if it will affect what he does in the season. But if the Giants can stay healthy, I think this is a team that'll head back to the Super Bowl. And I see a Giants versus Patriots, part 3.
In the NFC, I definitely think the Dallas Cowboys will get to the Super Bowl. I really like their offensive line. It's arguably one of the best offensive lines in the last 20 years. I'm pretty sure anyone could run behind it. And then they got Zeke, who's a great guy to run behind that offensive line. Prescott had an amazing rookie season, and I don't think that he's going to go downhill from there. And I think that he's just going to continue to get better, and that him and Zeke have a special relationship, and that I think this is the year that the Cowboys get back in the Super Bowl. New England, there's no competition for them in the AFC. I think that on paper, this is the best New England team that Bill Belichick has ever had, and that Tom Brady is going to just ignore all the media like he does every year and ignore everyone else and just do his job. And I think this Patriots team is going to be fun to watch. I mean, they went to the Super Bowl last year without Gronk. Then they go and sign Brandon Cooks. They have Gronk back. They sign an offensive lineman. And they get Stephon Gilmore for the defense. Not to mention they re-signed Malcolm Butler. I mean, this team just is doing everything right, and they're in a whole different league than the rest of the team.
I'm going to challenge you real quick, Griffin, about the Dallas Cowboys here, due to the simple fact that if Ezekiel Elliott gets suspended, like the league is possibly saying, he has had multiple incidents this offseason. Does that affect the Cowboys enough where you see him possibly not getting to the Super Bowl, possibly not even getting to the playoffs? And what is the importance of Dez Bryant now? He had a rough year, to say the least, last year. So do you see him having a bounce-back year, or do you see him continuing to struggle? And if so, how much will that affect the Cowboys?
The thing with Dez Bryant is that I think the reason he wasn't happy last year is because he wasn't getting the touches that he liked, that he was getting with Romo, really. And that's just simply because Prescott wasn't as comfortable throwing the ball, and that he had Zeke to rely on for some of the part. And I think this year Prescott's going to be a lot more comfortable and be throwing to Dez in that one-on-one situation a lot more. And if he can put it in the right spot, Dez is sure going to go get it. And with Zeke's situation, whether he's suspended or not, the Cowboys' toughest competition is going to be in their own division. If they can come out of the NFC East on top, I think that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. The Giants are going to have a good team, and the Redskins could surprise some people, and I think that's one of the best divisions in football. But I think that whether Zeke's suspended, it's not going to be for more than 4 games and then at the beginning of the season. And if the Cowboys can just stay on track and win 2 or 3 of the 4 when Zeke's gone, then they'll be all right.
I have a question for everybody who chose the Patriots as their AFC team. How do you see the stigma that quarterbacks, once they turn 40, their play going massively downhill? Do you see that affecting Tom Brady at all?
I'll start this one off. I don't see it affecting Tom Brady in any means. I think Tom Brady is arguably probably the best quarterback of all time. Him and Joe Montana, those are the 2 at the top right now. And Tom Brady, he showed no signs of slowing down last year. He looked absolutely fantastic last year, and I expect nothing different this year. You got the guy more weapons, like I said, with Brandon Cooks joining that superpower offense. So I don't see Tom Brady struggling this year. I think that he's going to be just fine there in New England.
I don't think that's the case for Tom Brady, and I'll tell you why. It's because he's not going to have to do much in the regular season. He has so many other guys that he can rely on that it's not the wear and tear on his body. You don't see Tom Brady running out of the pocket and making all these crazy plays, and you rarely see Tom Brady even getting sacked. It's something where that he has done a really good job of preserving his body over the years, and that's going to be the reason that he'll be able to play longer in the end. And I think that the Patriots will have no trouble getting back to the Super Bowl even though Tom Brady's 40.
I agree with both of you guys, and I saw a thing today on Sal Powell's Instagram where he interviewed Gronkowski, and Gronk said that Tom Brady gets better with time, like a fine wine, and I agree with that. I think that as Tom Brady gets older, he can surround himself with weapons like people that you've never even heard of, such as like Chris Hogan, who people have never even heard of, how he got cut and how he turned him into such a great player. I think that Tom Brady, like what you said, it does a good job of avoiding sacks and does a good job of avoiding getting hit, and his body, he can preserve it and not take as many hits as other quarterbacks.
All right, let's kind of shift focus here. Let's go to something that we talked about earlier today, and that is the Mount Rushmore. But this will be the Mount Rushmore of the NFL. So, in your opinion, the top 4 players in the NFL, the Mount Rushmore of the league. Let's start with you, Griffin.
Are you asking me all time or that are currently in the league?
Currently in the league, the current Mount Rushmore of the NFL.
Well, there's no doubt that number 1 is going to be Tom Brady because he's on my Mount Rushmore of athletes ever, and I think he's the greatest football player, one of the greatest athletes to ever play. And so he's going to be my first guy. That's tough. If we're just going by position, if I was to put a running back in there, I would probably put Le'Veon Bell just because he's kind of in his prime right now in this league, and that I think this season he's going to really just break some numbers. And the fact that if you can have another guy on your team like Antonio Brown that has the skill that you have and is just as talented of a player, it takes the pressure off. And I think Le'Veon Bell is going to be able to shine this year even more because Ben Roethlisberger is in the later part of his career, and I like him. My third guy would be Odell, just because he's such a star, and he's really the man that's always in the media, and everyone's talking about him, and it's Odell Beckham this, Odell Beckham that, and I think that he's the best wide receiver in the league, probably the best athlete in the league, so I'd put him there. And I'd like to grab a guy from the defense. There's a lot of guys that you could go with, but I really like Josh Norman. I think Josh Norman kind of has that attitude, that kind of Deion Sanders attitude where it's just like, come at me. I want you to try to score on me. And I think that he's one of the best shutdown corners in the league, and he'd be my 4th.
I completely agree with you until you said Josh Norman. I would go, if I'm going to say a defensive player, I'm going to go with J.J. Watt. I think the way that he plays the game is just absolutely phenomenal. So I would have to take J.J. Watt, and then for the same reasons you said, I think Odell is just he's known worldwide. If you go anywhere, everybody knows Odell Beckham Jr. Same with Tom Brady, and then Le'Veon Bell, arguably the best running back in the league. Real quick, Philip.
I'd have to go Tom Brady. I agree with that. J.J. Watt, I definitely agree with that. But I also agree with Le'Veon Bell. But I have to go Joe Thomas, the left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, has been the best lineman, in my opinion, in the NFL for about 10 years now. So I'd have to go Joe Thomas.
And
I would stick with the same people, but I would change Antonio Brown. I think Antonio Brown would be a better wide receiver, and I also would change defensive player. I would change to Von Miller. I think Von Miller is one of the best defensive linebackers in the game.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening to the Four Musketeers, and we're out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Football Talk. My name is Ben Curtis, alongside Mason Cole and Tyler Katz, and today we're breaking down one of the most wide-open divisions in football, the NFC East. So, Mason, let's start with you, and let's start with the Dallas Cowboys, the team who won the division last year. Ezekiel Elliott may or may not be playing Week 1. What do you see from the Cowboys?
I still think the Cowboys are going to be very good, with or without Zeke in the first, few weeks. I mean, their backup running back, Alfred Morris, still a Pro Bowl level running back. I think they'll be good. Still have the same offensive line, which is the best in football. Still have Dak Prescott, who I think is going to be a very good quarterback this year. They still have Dez Bryant. They kept around all the players that made them good last year. I think they're going to be just as good. Maybe I don't think they're going to be better, but I think they'll be just as good. Same level, 13-3.
Questions about whether or not Dak Prescott will have that famed sophomore slump, which has plagued so many phenomenal quarterbacks who had a good rookie year. Now, Tyler, let's move to you. As Mason said, Alfred Morris may need to step in the place of Ezekiel Elliott with that offensive line, which, nothing can be said about, which hasn't already been said. It's the best in football. How much do Dallas need Morris to step up?
They need Morris to step up exponentially. As you said, Dak Prescott, he might hit that sophomore slump. I think he is going to hit that sophomore slump. In fact, I have him as the disappointment player in the NFC East. So if the Cowboys want to be good this year, they're going to need Alfred Morris to step up, because I don't think Dak Prescott is going to have the ability to drive the Cowboys to another NFC Conference championship. I think it's going to rely on players like Jason Witten and Alfred Morris, and of course that offensive line to be able to provide the holes for the Cowboys' running game.
Well, there certainly is no better insurance for an offense than a good offensive line. And we'll move to the team that's probably the biggest challenger for Dallas, and that's the New York Giants. With that pass rush that everybody's talking about, Ben McAdoo's now settled in East Rutherford. And Tyler, we'll start with you. How far do the Giants go this year?
I have the Giants going past the Cowboys in the playoffs. In fact, I have them going to the conference championship. I think Ben McAdoo, his second-year coach, he drove the Giants to the playoffs last year. I think he's going to make the adjustments necessary to drive the Giants into the conference championship. While I do have them ranked second in the NFC East standings at the end of the season, I think the playoffs are where they're really going to strive and where they're going to go far and reach the conference championship. I don't necessarily have them reaching Super Bowl 52, but I do think that they're going to make it to the conference championship under second-year coach Ben McAdoo.
Mason, you bet against Eli Manning at your own risk. What do you think about the Giants this year?
I mostly agree with Tyler. I think they'll be pretty good. I also have them second in the NFC East. When it comes to playoff time, the Giants are probably, they perform in the playoffs. They've always been pretty good in the playoffs. I also have them going to the conference championship. But, I don't know if they're going to win it this year.
Well, if Sterling Shepard can get healthy, then they'll certainly be a team to watch with Odell Beckham Jr., of course, extremely dangerous. Now on to the Philadelphia Eagles, perhaps the biggest question mark-filled team in this division. Carson Wentz, most likely the starter in Philadelphia. That wide receiving core that has the potential to be really good and compete with Odell Beckham Jr., but right now is not there. Mason, we'll start with you. How does Philadelphia get into that upper echelon in the NFC East?
I think they're going to be one of the most improved teams in the NFL. If you look at their offseason, if you look at the players they acquired in the offseasons, they have Wentz still, and if he might hit a sophomore slump, he might not. But they added Alshon Jeffrey, who's a very, very good wide receiver. They added Torrey Smith, who also, a pretty good wide receiver. And they added to their pass rush Derek Barnett, very good defensive end. So I think they'll be improved. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they'll be around that 7-9, 8-8, record range. I think they'll be improved, but it all does depend on how Carson Wentz performs.
Tyler?
For Philadelphia, I have them as going an average 8-8 this year. Well, I do think that they're going to improve. Carson Wentz is going to need to step up into that starting role as a quarterback and really become the face of this Eagles franchise and take over for years to come. because I think that with Carson Wentz under center, I think that if he progresses to become a real NFL talent, he himself can drive the Eagles to the playoffs, potentially the divisional or conference championship, like Dak Prescott did with the Dallas Cowboys a year ago, driving Dallas to a 13-3 record. I think Carson Wentz can do the same thing for Philadelphia. I don't think it's going to be this year, but I think we're going to be seeing some interesting things with the Eagles in the years to come.
Yeah, you guys said it very well. I think that they're going to be a mediocre team this year. The addition of Jeffrey Smith could propel them soon towards that top part of the NFC East. And finally, Washington, a team that most people have at the bottom of the division. How can they get up and win the division or make a wild card? Tyler.
I don't think they are. I have them in the basement of the NFC East. In fact, when I was writing down my standings, I had them at 6-10, the opposite of the Giants, which I had at 10-6. With Kirk Cousins at quarterback, he's not really known as a quarterback in the NFL. In fact, if Washington can get their hands on a good running back core and wide receivers, then I don't believe that Kirk Cousins will even be needed, especially now with getting the hits in. We could be seeing an injury coming out of Washington with Kirk Cousins this year that could drive him to lose the starting job, just like Alex Smith with the 49ers a few years ago. So I don't see Washington heading anywhere soon. 2 years ago, yes, they made it to the playoffs. Yes, they lost in the wild card. But I see them in the basement of the NFC East for at least another 3 years.
Mason, do you agree with Tyler?
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance the Redskins make the playoffs this year. I think they'll be average. Kirk Cousins is a pretty good quarterback. I think they added a very good playmaker in Terrell Pryor in the offseason. But other than that, I just don't think they have enough talent on their roster to get to the playoffs this year. I just don't think it's the Redskins' year.
Yeah, I agree with you, although I think that Terrell Pryor is a very interesting acquisition. He's a guy who can play a lot of different positions on the football field, something you don't see all that often. So as Tyler said, if injuries do start to happen, I think that they have perhaps the best depth, at least on the offensive skill position side, as any team in the NFC East. But now, Tyler, you mentioned that the Giants have a chance to go all the way to the conference championship game. Do you see any other team making the playoffs, and how far do you think they go?
Yes, I had the New York Giants as the second team getting a wild card berth. So that says a lot, first of all, about the New York Giants to go from the wild card game to the conference championship, which, first of all, we don't see very often anymore in the NFL. As for other playoff teams, I have the Dallas Cowboys winning the division, getting that first round bye, getting into the divisional automatically. While it does come as an 11-5 record for my predictions, I do think that the Cowboys will lose in that divisional round. I just don't believe that with the loss to Green Bay this year and with my prior prediction of Dak Prescott not performing, hitting that sophomore slump, I just don't think the Dallas Cowboys can handle the pressure and immense strength of the NFC playoffs this year. So that's why I have them losing the divisional round.
Mason, is Dallas finally built for the playoffs?
I agree with Tyler. I think they'll be, they're going to win the division. They're going to get a bye, but I don't have them getting past the divisional round. They're, a young team. Dak Prescott, only a second-year quarterback. I just don't think that they're mature enough right now to, be able to contend for the Super Bowl yet.
And what about the Giants, do you think?
I
Eli Manning was able to make that big run a couple of years ago twice.
Yeah, if the Giants stay healthy, I definitely do think that they could contend for the Super Bowl, obviously. They've done it. Eli's won 2. And I just think that he knows how to win Super Bowls. So I think that the Giants, I don't think you can ever count out the Giants as long as they make the playoffs.
I agree with you. I think that the Giants are certainly one of the most dangerous teams every time it comes to the playoffs, assuming they do get in. Odell Beckham Jr. has not had that much success in the playoffs. Yeah. Obviously, the last time the Giants made the Super Bowl and then beat New England, Odell was not on the roster. That's going to wrap it up for Football Talk. Mason Cole and Tyler Katz here. Thanks so much for watching us as we break down the NFC East.
Welcome back to Football Now here on ESPN. Alongside my co-hosts Noah Jaffe and Peyton Wolf, I'm Jackson Neal, talking today about our predictions for this year's NFL season. It's already August.
Right.
Noah, I want to ask you. We're talking about our rising teams. What's one team you're looking out for this year?
Well, Jackson, I'm definitely looking out at the Tennessee Titans. I believe that they'll be a dominant force this year because Marcus Mariota this year is now healthy. I believe that he will be helpful to the team, and I think that they will be a breakout team this year.
You definitely look at the Tennessee Titans can take some major strides. Peyton,
Right.
what is one team that you're looking at right now?
I'm definitely looking at the Tennessee Titans as well. I have to agree with Noah because Marcus Mariota just had his rookie season, and then not even I think it was 3 weeks into his sophomore season he got hurt and was out for the rest of the season. So you can't really judge a quarterback on 2 weeks into their 3 weeks into their sophomore year. So I'm really excited to see how Marcus Mariota does.
And speaking of, and it's a very similar vein to Marcus Mariota getting injured. I'm looking at the Oakland Raiders. We saw Derek
Right.
Carr there get injured towards the end of last year. So to see him and what this Raiders team can really do, they have pieces on both sides of the field with Carr and Amari Cooper on the offensive side, and then obviously Khalil Mack, a huge difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. That's the team I'm looking at right now, in terms of a rising team in the
Right.
NFL.
I definitely agree with that. I think that they'll be a great team in the future, and hopefully we'll win a Super Bowl. And hopefully, when they win the Super Bowl, they'll be in Las Vegas, so that they can consider that one of their first championships that they've ever had.
Yeah, moving this offseason, they announced. Very similar vein, breakout rookie, a player who just came into the league. Noah, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at Leonard Fournette. I think that he is a great player, great running back. Even though the Jaguars do have a lot of good running backs, I think that he is a great fit for them. He is basically got speed like a receiver and a body like a linebacker. I think that he is a great player, and I think that he'll have a good potential this season.
I understand that you're also, Peyton, you're also looking at another running back in the NFL that's a rookie.
Yes, I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey from Stanford. He has 2 older brothers. One of them actually played in the NFL for a season and then got out. I believe he played with the Vikings before he retired. But Christian, he's so small and quick, and he's been doing so much training, and you can tell by watching all of their training camp stuff that he is just mixing so well with Cam Newton. And I think that is so important to have that chemistry with a running back and a quarterback. So I'm very excited to see how well he does in Carolina with Cam.
We'll keeping up with both your running back selections. I'm also looking at another back there with Dalvin Cook over there for the Minnesota Vikings. We just saw Adrian Peterson had a tremendous career for the Vikings. He's now gone. He's in New Orleans. But that's still a running game, a team that wants to put the ball on the ground. Dalvin Cook's going to have to step up and show that he can take over for the legendary Adrian Peterson.
I agree with that. Drew Brees is really their offense down there is truly based on running back, so it should be interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And not just rookies, but all players. Is there another guy who you would say you're thinking of as breaking out as well?
I think that even though that he did have a bit of a bad season last year, I think that Carson Wentz, might have a little bit of better potential this year. I think that he's learned his mistakes from last year, and I believe that he will help the Eagles to be a better team. I don't think that they'll make the playoffs, but I do think that they'll get a step further in making it.
Yeah, going into a second season is always a big step for a quarterback to see if they can make that transition. Peyton, who's somebody you're looking out for?
Going back to the rising teams, I'm looking at Marcus Mariota. I think that, like I said, his sophomore year was cut short, so this is kind of, if you will, his sophomore year instead of his junior year. And, he did so well at Oregon, and he had some really good deep passes, and I'm excited to see if they pull that into what they have, if the offense pulls that in down Tennessee.
Going back to what you said with the Carson Wentz, I think another player on the Eagles, Alshon Jeffrey, just moved to the team. Carson Wentz, I also expect to take some big strides, but for Jeffrey, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league on pure talent, and I think Carson Wentz is going to be the quarterback that can really deliver the ball to him. And there's several receivers in that offense that I like: Jordan Matthews, Torrey Smith, but Alshon Jeffrey is going to be the centerpiece, and I think that he can really shine in this offense. And now a big question:
Okay. All right.
where the biggest team, what team do you look at as being your Super Bowl favorite or the biggest contender?
That's a good question. I think that the Atlanta Falcons, I think that they really are going to be a big Super Bowl contender this year. I think that they made mistakes last year, that big upset in the Super Bowl, but I think that, they learn from them, and like everybody that learns from a mistake, they try not to do it again, and I believe that this year we'll probably see them back in the Super Bowl, I think.
Coming back from that, after that 28-3 utter collapse, is going to be, they definitely have a lot of motivation to come back and try to prove themselves. Peyton, how about you? Who do you looking at for the Super Bowl?
For the Super Bowl, I am looking at the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that Carson Wentz is just so ready, coming into his sophomore season. I think that he is ready to win a Super Bowl. He's hungry. I mean, coming from South Dakota, the cold, I think he's just really going to bring one back for the city of Philadelphia.
Obviously, on the show, thinking very highly of the Eagles. You're talking about Super Bowl contenders. I love Alshon Jeffrey, Carson Wentz, their breakout players. But I'm going to throw it back to my rising team for my Super Bowl contender, the Oakland Raiders. I really believe in Derek Carr. He was having a tremendous season last year before the injury and before that whole season got sidelined. Khalil Mack on the defensive end, you could argue, is one of the most impactful. Him and J.J. Watt, I would say, on pure impact at their highest levels, what they can do on the defensive side is really incredible. So I look at the Oakland Raiders as a team where going into this season, they haven't had success in the past. They've struggled recently, but I think this could be their year to take it all the way.
Yeah, I think that really the injury of Derek Carr last year just did it in for them, and I think that this year, I think that, they got Marshawn Lynch, which, he was a great player, but he's been retired for a season. So, it might take some time for him to come back, but I think that he's a great running back, and I think that he'll definitely add a lot to the team.
Well, that'll wrap it up for this edition of Football Now. For my co-hosts, Noah Jaffe and Peyton Wolf, I'm Jackson Neal. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Caden Vincent on the WCNG show, along with Griffin Hill and Will Dirks. And we got a lot to talk about. Let's just get right into it. World Series postseason prediction. Will, I'm going to start with you. Who's your postseason, let's do ALCS and World Series teams.
Okay, ALCS. This may sound familiar, but I got to go to this. Indians, Red Sox.
Okay.
These two just are, in my opinion, the top two in the league. I think the Indians, if they stay at the pace they are, they can overtake the Stros.
But won't they be playing each other most likely? Because it seems like the Astros are going to play the wild card team. And right now, as of today, the Indians and the Red Sox would be playing each other in the ALDS. So you can't really put them if they're putting against each other. So
Okay, then let's go Astros and Indians.
Okay.
With the Indians heading back to the series. And then for the National League, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if the season ended today, would the Dodgers and the Nationals not play each other?
Right now, the Nationals are in second place, and the Cubs, I believe, do have a lead against the.
Okay, good.
So it'd be go.
Then I'm gonna say the Nationals and the Dodgers for the NL, with the Dodgers defeating the Nationals in 7.
Okay.
World Series pick: Indians in 6, folks. Go Tribe.
All right. I like that. Griff, what's your prediction?
I think that the Astros are going to get to the World Series out of the AL. They're the
Okay.
hottest hitting team in baseball. They have a lot of young talent, and they're kind of playing with that attitude of we have nothing to lose, because it's not like this is the last year that they can do this. They're going to be a good team
Right.
for years to come, and I think that the Astros kind of have the attitude that can get them into the World Series. I think they're going to defeat the Red Sox, and because I like how the Red Sox are playing. Chris Sale's playing out of his mind right now, and their pitching staff is just insane.
It was pretty
And-
good except for last night when he. Go on, though. He gave up a lot of runs.
And in the
but,
NL,
you were saying?
I like the Dodgers a lot,
Uh-huh.
but I really like the Cubs getting back to the World Series. It's how you finish, and the Dodgers are playing well the second half of the season, but the Cubs have really turned their season around, and I think that they can take that momentum and push that into the playoffs and get back to the World Series. Once it gets to the World Series, I'm going to take the Astros over the Cubs. I don't think the Cubs can do it twice in a row, and I think the Astros are a team going forward that's going to be good in the
So
future.
your prediction is Houston. Okay. Well, I'm going to say mine really quickly. Cleveland and Houston. Just knowing what happened last season between Boston and Cleveland, Cleveland kind of swept they swept, but it wasn't really that hard for Cleveland. Obviously this year it's different, Boston taking 2, but I'm saying Houston and Cleveland, and Cleveland's won 5 out of 6 this year from Houston. And they swept them in Houston, so I'm going Cleveland in the World Series and Dodgers because, I mean, let's face it, they're definitely one of the best teams in MLB. I mean, they're a surprising team because we knew they were going to be good, but 75-31, that's unbelievable.
insane.
Yeah. So I'm saying Indians, Dodgers, and unfortunately Cleveland. I don't think it's going to be this year. The Dodgers are going to win in 6. Okay. Now let's move on to some NFL talk. the sleeper teams and the bust teams. Griffin, let's start with you.
I think a bust team is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. I think everyone is assuming that they're going to be good this year just because they got to the Super Bowl the previous season. But there's a stat that's something like in the last 10 seasons, 7 new teams are in the NFL playoffs every year.
Right.
And I think the Atlanta Falcons are kind of going to have that Carolina Panthers story where they get to the Super Bowl, but then the following year they're just not good. And I think that loss was demoralizing, and I just don't think they're going to get back to the playoffs. A sleeper team that I would like, coming out of the AFC, I think the Titans are going to get to the playoffs. Of that Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston's class, I think Mariota was the best quarterback going forward as an NFL-style quarterback. And I think that the Titans are going to finally get to the playoffs this year.
Okay. All right, and now I'm going to go quickly, and then you would like to go?
Yes.
Okay. My sleeper team is, and this is going to be a surprise, the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been in the playoffs many times, and even though their team isn't as great as people expected as maybe the Colts or other teams, they don't really have a tough division or their schedule if you really look at it. So I think Kansas City is going to move on to the playoffs. I don't know if they'll go very far, but they'll definitely be in the playoffs. And my bust team would have to be, I'm going to say it, Buffalo. And even though they are never a great team, they're 8-8. They're almost 500. Tyrod Taylor, Sammy Watkins, etc. They have a good team. But again, I don't think it's going to be their year to get to the playoffs. And obviously they have the longest drought. Will, who are you saying?
Well, for a sleeper team, if you ask me, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They took a big leap adding Deshaun Jackson in the offseason. That's going to be the thing Jameis Winston needs to go from good to great. The Bucs can easily crash the NFC South and win the division if Atlanta blows up. And for my bust team, you might think this is a surprise. The Seattle Seahawks. Yes, I know.
Okay,
They're 3 years off of a Super Bowl win. But somehow this NFC West keeps going down. There isn't a clear champion yet for me. And as long as the Seahawks, they got to figure something out. Because I'm starting to think that if they can't get to another Super Bowl, then not only are the fans going to be mad, but I have a feeling Pete Carroll's going to go ballistic.
I would agree.
And with the state of the division, I'm not going to be surprised if a team goes to the playoffs from the NFC West that wins 10 games or less.
But saying that, I'm going to really quickly add on. The NFC West doesn't really have a hard division as of last season. Obviously, LA had a horrible season. San Francisco, an awful season. And, I mean, Arizona, they were decent, but I don't know if they'll be that type team as they were last season. So I would still have to say Seattle. All right, now let's go to the NBA talk now. As Rookie of the Year, obviously there are a lot of good picks for this. Who's going to stand out? Will, let's start with you.
Rookie of the Year. Wait till you hear this. It's a shocker. Lonzo Ball.
All right, there you have it right there.
That's pretty much about it. Enough said. He's a great two-way, three-way player. He can shoot, he can score, he can pass. He's really a good modern point guard for any team to have. I can see why his dad really likes him.
Yeah, his dad also likes a lot of other things. All right, Griffin, who's your Rookie of the Year?
I'm agreeing that it's Lonzo Ball, and I'll tell you why. Some of these other guys, if someone besides Lonzo Ball to win it, I would say De'Aaron Fox, but I think Ball has the defense that Fox doesn't. And I think that the difference between them and some of the other rookies coming in is guys like Jason Tatum are put in a situation with the Boston Celtics that he's just going to be thrown into something that's already moving, something that is trying to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers going into the playoffs, and Jason Tatum's going to be in a spot where he has to guard the top players in the East, and if he messes up in a game, there's not going to be anyone saying, like, patting him on the back saying, it's okay. They're going to be saying, what are you doing? We're trying to get to the finals.
Exactly.
Whereas Fox, Ball, guys like that, they have veterans on their team that can help coach them, and it's more of a learning process, and it's a lot easier to play when you're not under that pressure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you guys about Lonzo, but there's also a couple guys. I think Jason Tatum has a chance, definitely. I showed it completely in Summer League. As you said, De'Aaron Fox, but my guy, because he didn't play all season, and I'm sure he's going to come out this season and show why he should be Rookie of the Year, Ben Simmons. We saw him at LSU. unbelievable numbers for college, and obviously got injured, and I think he's going to show that he should be the Rookie of the Year and take over this league. All right, now our final question, or final thing, MVP.
Well, I don't really postseason NBA awards. I don't think are necessarily based on who actually deserves them, but who's going to win the MVP and who I think is the actual most valuable player to their team is completely different.
Okay.
I obviously think that LeBron James is the most valuable player to his team, and I think that he honestly should be in the MVP race every year. But sadly, he's not, and that's not how it works. Going to the MVP next year, I think Kawhi Leonard's going to win. I think that he's been close in the past, which he has, and that next season he's finally going to get that MVP, even though he's still at a young age. And with some of the older guys in the Spurs fading away, it's really going to be his team. And I think that the Spurs will obviously be a top team in the West as long as Popovich is there, and that Kawhi is going to lead them this season.
Okay. Will?
You made me change my mind, Griff. I agree with you 100% about Kawhi. I agree with everything you said. The only thing I would add to that would be Kawhi hasn't really yet been exposed on the big stage. And now, as you said, this is his team. Now that Parker and Ginobili and Aldridge are getting old, Kawhi needs to make the most of this season. And it also should be noted that his defense is good too. He was the only one who can guard Kevin Durant before he went down with an injury in last year's Western Conference Finals.
Well, obviously it's going to come down to what you guys said, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, LeBron. But here's a guy who's way outside, and no one would think this, but I think being on a new team, being with Russell, will help him. Paul George. We've seen his numbers in Indiana. He led this team. Can we be honest? They wouldn't make the playoffs without him. They wouldn't even be close. Now that he's with Russell Westbrook, a great passing point guard, a great shooter, and a great rebounder, and that's just going to help Paul George. All right, that's all the time we have. I'm Caden Vincent with
Griffin Hill.
and
William Dirksen.
saying good night.